This is RED Podcast, episode number 225, Donald Trump. He had a post-election rally in Nashville, and I tried to sneak in. That's coming up.
This is the RED Podcast, the marketing podcast for influencers. Rise above the noise. Expand your audience. Deliver impact. Here's your host, David Hooper.
This podcast is about how you can build influence in three different ways. One, we'll call it print, the written word. Books, blogs, magazines, articles. Two, I call it broadcasting. Specifically, I focus on podcasting, but it could be YouTube, it could be television broadcasting, any kind of video or audio that you produce. And three, live events, seminars, boot camps, rallies. That's what this episode is about, because I just attended the king of live events, a post-election Donald Trump rally. I attended the one in Nashville. Very interesting, a lot of business lessons for you. I'm going to get to those in a second. First of all, because a lot of people are curious, I'm going to give you a firsthand account of what actually happened at this rally from my perspective. There were thousands and thousands of people there. A lot of people walked away with a lot of different perspectives. This is mine. I actually didn't make it inside the rally. I had tickets. A lot of people have tickets. Tried to sneak in, tried to break line. That didn't work. More on that in a moment. But like a Grateful Dead concert, some of the most interesting things were happening in the parking lot around the area where the venue was. That's what I'm going to get into. This is the RED Podcast, the podcast for influencers. I talk about the holy trinity of influence, what I just mentioned: books, podcasts, live events. If you've got a message to spread, you want to make people care about it, this is the podcast for you. Let me give you some background about what this is, what I just attended. Trump has been doing these post-election rallies. He's already won, but he's still campaigning. It's almost like a rock concert. The venue where he was in Nashville, on the marquee, it said President Donald J. Trump. Also coming up, Lil Wayne, Boston, and Korn. Definitely a rock venue. He promoted this like it was a rock and roll show. A lot of social media, a lot of robocalls. In fact, here's a recording of a robocall that I received.
This is Laura Trump calling on behalf of my father-in-law, President Donald Trump. I am incredibly excited to invite you to an event in your area. This special rally event featuring President Donald Trump will take place on Wednesday, March 15th at 6:30 p.m. at the Nashville Municipal Auditorium. Doors open at 3:30 p.m. To get your free tickets, please visit our website at www.donaldjtrump.com/schedule. We can't wait to greet you at the event and share this incredible experience. Thank you.
This message is paid for by Donald J. Trump for President, Inc. 646-736-1779.
No idea how he got my number, but like a lot of politicians, they've got access to things that we have no idea about. Word got out about this event, and almost immediately there was a liberal plan to try to foil it. The first plan: get tickets and don't use them. People thought if they got tickets and you could get 2 per person, they were free, and they didn't use those tickets, that Trump would show up to an empty auditorium. That didn't work. And the reason is because the venue was oversold. This happens not just at a Trump event. This happens all the time. Any kind of live event that's going to be broadcast, they either use seat fillers, where they hire people to fill seats, and Trump has done that. He's known to do that. He does not want to have an empty auditorium. Or they oversell the event, giving away free tickets. This happens at movie premieres, live events, as I mentioned, television shows that are being broadcast live. Anytime there needs to be a full audience for the camera, they're going to oversell the events. That's exactly what he did. Gave away 25,000 tickets for a venue that only held 9,000 people. So that was plan number 1. Get tickets, don't use them. Trump shows up for an empty auditorium. It didn't work. Plan number 2. Fill the venue with liberal people, and as soon as Trump comes on, walk out 5 minutes later. A massive blow to his ego. Good idea, but unorganized. And I don't think that people realized how dedicated Trump supporters were. They were there all day. In order to make it in the venue, you had to show up very, very early. Like an old school rock concert, like launching the new iPhone. People were camping out, waiting in line hours and hours before the doors opened. Let me tell you what my plan was. My plan, I did want to get in. Had a sneaky way of doing it. I'll get into that in a minute. I wanted to blend in, have conversations with people. Didn't bathe for a couple days. Wore some jeans I'd been doing yard work in. They were really muddy. Work boots. Had a tech jacket from a friend of mine who used to work climbing poles at AT&T. I was going to try to blend in right there in the middle. Not too dressed up. Not wearing a pink hat. And definitely not wearing a coat made out of an American flag. So here's the situation. Here's what I got myself into. As I mentioned, wasn't able to get in. 25,000 tickets given out for this, for a venue that only had 9,000 seats. A massive crowd. Let me explain more about the venue. Municipal Auditorium right in the center of downtown Nashville. It's been there since the 60s. The line, when I got downtown, I actually thought it was a protest. I'd heard there was a protest at the state capitol. The line went from Municipal Auditorium around the block all the way to the state capitol and around the state capitol. The line was at least a mile long. I parked several blocks away. You're not really able to get too close to these events with cars. A lot of Secret Service, a lot of securities. And as I was walking up, I was sure that this was a protest. But as I got closer, you could see that there was one demographic in this line. And that demographic was not Trump protesters, but Trump supporters. There were no buses. These people weren't being bussed in. This was a very grassroots thing. A lot of cars, a lot of trucks, a lot of big Trump flags flying from those trucks. That says something about loyalty, doesn't it? It takes a lot of work to get to an event like this. It's in the middle of the day. You've got to wait for it. It was 20-something degrees outside. I saw plates from as far away as Texas. People had driven a long way to get to this event. They put in a lot of time, effort, and energy. And later on, when I'm done describing the event, I'm going to talk about this. How has Trump built this kind of community? I think it's something that's going to be very interesting for you as an influencer, somebody trying to spread a message. How can you do the same thing with your community? Let's talk about the crowd that was there. Pissed off is the best way to describe them. Both sides were pissed off. One of the first people that I talked to, she is signed with a big middle finger. She was on the liberal side. She was protesting. And some guy in a red hat walks by, and he says, "That looks like a dick." Her response, "You can suck a dick." My response, I said, "Lady, you're not going to change any opinions here today, but you might piss off one of these rednecks and get hurt." She kept at it, and I got out of there. A highly volatile crowd from both sides. And that really surprised me. I was thinking more of the volatility was going to be coming from the Trump supporters. A lot of these left-leaning guys, and I consider myself a left-wing person, very pissed, equally as riled up as the Trump supporters. I want you to imagine Facebook in real life. That's exactly what it was. One side, American flags, Trump flags, waving them in the air. The other side, Planned Parenthood banners. Everybody had flags. Everybody had signs. It was like Facebook in real life. Not a lot of conversation going on, not a lot of minds being changed. Everybody thought that they were making their point. I'm not sure that they actually did. Again, a lot like Facebook, a lot like Twitter, a lot of people shouting in a crowded room with everybody else shouting. I don't think anybody was actually getting heard. A quick word about mob mentality. I think there's a marketing lesson here. The crowds were separated. You had the liberal crowd separated on one side of the street, a conservative crowd on the other side of the street. Let me tell you how I tried to sneak in. As I mentioned, there's a line. It's about a mile long, huge line. Thousands and thousands of people trying to get in. Way oversold. 25,000 tickets given away for a 9,000 seat venue. But there are also a lot of cop cars, a lot of security cars trying to come through the crowd. Those are the only cars that were allowed in this area. As I was walking, I was with a buddy of mine. He said, whoa, hold back here. They're getting ready to break the line. When one of these cop cars did break the line, basically separating it so the car could get through, we jumped in. So I'm at the end of this broken line. As the line comes back together, I'm now in the middle of a much longer line, waiting my turn, much closer, or so I thought, to getting in to see Donald Trump. So I'm there waiting in line, basically against the wall of the venue. The venue is a huge, round building. The line is wrapped around the building. There's switchbacks. There's barricades. People had been there all day. They're tired. They're cold. They're hungry. And not 5 feet away from me, 2 guys get into it. One guy throws the punch. The other guy deflects it. Some girl gets punched in the face. So I'm next to that wall. And I've been around a lot of crowds and been in the rock and roll business long enough to know that that's the last place that you want to be because you can get crushed against the wall. As a matter of fact, at this very venue, Municipal Auditorium, on the inside of the venue, there were some women who were crushed to death. When a crowd got out of control, they started running. They came to a door thinking that the door was going to open up and get them away from the crowd. The door was locked, padlocked, and they got crushed to death. So it happens. I was well aware of it. The cops seemed completely overwhelmed, unprepared for this type of crowd. So me and my friend that I was with, we got out of there. And going from the conservative area to the protest area, I met a guy who was going from the protest area to the conservative area. Everything was organized to where you had to go through certain paths. The cops, the Secret Service, security, they were trying their best to do crowd control. And as I was going from the conservative area to the liberal area, again, I'm dressed up like a blue-collar worker. I'm thinking I'm blending in. I'm a middle-of-the-road guy. I walk toward this guy. He's walking toward me. He's got not quite a ski mask on, not a scarf, but some kind of headgear that's covering his mouth and nose. He's got sunglasses. And I'm facing this guy on the path. So I move a little bit to the right, thinking he's going to go to the right. Again, all black, face covered, just stands there looking at me about a foot away from me. And this guy's kind of fat. And I'm thinking, maybe I'm not going far enough right for this guy to get around me because there are a lot of people there. There are huge barriers. Maybe I'm not giving him enough space. So I move a little bit more to the right, kind of lead with my shoulder. And he gets right by me. He goes, "Oh, can't figure out how it works, can you?" Trying to start a fight with me. And that's where I lost it. I said, "This is America, bitch. We walk on the right." I wanted to throat punch that motherfucker. That kind of energy, that negative energy, that's contagious. It's very dangerous to be in a crowd like this, whether you're liberal, whether you're conservative, whether you're somebody in the middle like me, just down there to have conversations with people. Momentum is contagious. Now, as a marketer, you can use that. Social proof, we call it. When you get enough people on your side, that energy is contagious. Winning over that first guy, a lot tougher than that 10th guy. And that 10th guy is tougher than the 100th guy. The 100th guy, tougher than the 1,000th guy. So think about that. How can you use that in your marketing to spread your message? One of the things that was interesting about this event, like a Grateful Dead show, and I knew this was going to happen. I knew there was going to be a lot of merch there. The pre-event literature said the only place to get official Trump merchandise is in the venue itself. But again, there's 25,000 people trying to get into a 9,000-seat event. Merch guys knew this. All sorts of Trump merchandise up and down the street, all bootleg. Every single hat, I looked at them, made in China. Every single shirt, made in Honduras. The people there didn't see the irony of this at all. But the most interesting thing to me, 90% of the merchants were black. The only black guys at a Trump rally were the guys selling Trump merch. So I talked to 3 or 4 of them. I've got audio of this. I'm actually trying to clean up the audio right now. I'm going to release it as a different episode of RED Podcast. If you want to make sure that you don't miss this, go to redpodcast.com. Right there at the top, 1 click is all it takes to make sure that you never miss an episode, and you'll get the audio that I've got with these black guys who were selling pro-Trump merchandise. By the way, 3 of these guys, they gave me the same canned response. They basically didn't want to get into it. There's already somebody engaging them in the very same way when I arrived at the first guy that I talked to. It was a question that they were getting all the time. Had a really good conversation with one of the guys, though. He's a former Marine, cool guy. Again, redpodcast.com, right at the top. Subscribe right now to make sure that you don't miss that. He gave me his social media info, got some interesting thoughts and perspectives about this guy. These dudes were hustlers. This guy told me $5,000 days are not uncommon for this business. He wasn't doing that kind of money at this event. Speaking of that hustle, this crowd was moving. One guy, I saw him set up 4 huge tables, about 10 feet long, set up his display in about 10 minutes. All the merch, mannequins, and this is without cars, without trucks, without anything to load from. These dudes were working with wagons, like little red wagons like your kid would have, filled with merch. And they would set this up and move to wherever the crowd was. So that's the kind of stuff that I saw at the Trump rally. Unfortunately, like 16,000 other people did not make it in to actually see the rally itself, but there were some good lessons from the parking lot, from the area around the municipal auditorium. Let me get to those. 1, people are pissed. How do you tap into that? Look what Donald Trump is doing. The way you tap into it is you offer relief. It's an easy sell. It's easy to sell a remedy for pain. Is there substance to what Donald Trump is selling? Maybe, maybe not. But the concept still stands. It's easy to sell a remedy for pain. What is your prospect's biggest problem? What is it that's keeping him up at night? If you can find that and offer a remedy for it, you're in. Number 2, simplify your message. It was amazing how simple the message of these crowds was. On one side, USA, USA. What does that even mean? You could have had the other side, the more liberal side, chanting the same thing, because that's what they want too, isn't it? Their version of America. Simplify your message. A simple message allows people to fill in the blanks. USA, that means different things to different people. Very simple message. Simplify your message. Make it easy for people to understand and let them put their own spin on it. Big lesson number 3, have an enemy. Focus the frustration away from you. Now, the whole concept of a campaign rally by a guy who won an election months ago, he's already won, Russian interference or not, Donald Trump is considered president of the United States. He is in the White House. Yet, he's still campaigning. And instead of talking about what he's going to do, he's still talking about Hillary. 50% of the merchandise for sale. All these guys who were hustling, anti-Hillary merchandise. There were Hillary gun targets, a lot of Trump that bitch shirts, a lot of merch that said lock her up. Have an enemy. As a side note to that, this is for all politicians, not just Donald Trump. It's not your fault you're in this situation. It's not your fault you didn't go to school and learn skills that would allow you to still have a job now that manufacturing is gone from the United States. That's not your fault. Not only are you focusing the frustration away from you, you're focusing the frustration away from them. It's not your fault. You're not fat because you're eating pizza and Mountain Dew all day. No. Here, have some more. It's their fault. People will do anything to keep from looking at themselves. Is it manipulative? Yes. So find a good way to use this, will you? Big lesson number 4, control the message. One of the interesting things that you saw in the pre-event literature, no signs are allowed in venues. Now, this makes a lot of sense. If you've ever been in a situation like this, you know how easy it is for signs held up by big pieces of wood to suddenly become weapons. The crowd was so concentrated, more than a few people got bonked in the head with flagpoles, especially the ones with the big eagles at the top. It was a mess. So Trump didn't let those signs in his venue. You can understand that. But here's the interesting element as far as controlling the message. When you got in the venue, they gave you a sign. Women for Trump, veterans for Trump, make America great again. They had a ton of them. I know this because I was at this event all night. When the rally let out, everybody who came out of the venue had a pro-Trump sign. They gave out signs. Control the message. If you want to start that mob mentality, control it. Start it and make it your own. If you want to have that social proof, start it. Don't wait for other people to do it. You start it yourself. Big lesson number 5, control perception. Mentioned this more than a few times. 25,000 tickets for a 9,000-seat event. Now, what does that do? It produces a very big line. Lots of people waiting, and that looks great on TV. It looks great on social media. The reality is, you got a lot of people who can't get in, and you would think that they would be pissed off. I traveled all the way from Texas in my big-ass truck, got there, and they didn't have enough room for me. You would think that would make people mad, but it allows people to feel part of something. To these people, it was just confirmation bias that Trump is the man. More people outside of the venue than inside of the venue. That is brilliant. I know a restaurant owner, brand new place, had a car full of rental cars, move them around, every few days change them out, made his restaurant look busy. When people would come in, he would seat them by the window. So the restaurant always looked full that way. And when he finally did have people start lining up, he kept people waiting. You didn't get in immediately. He wanted to make it look like it was busy. Build up that anticipation. Those are the 5 big business lessons from the post-election Trump rally. 1, people are pissed, and find out how you can tap into that. 2, simplify your message. 3, have an enemy, focus the frustration away from you, but also focus the frustration away from them. It's not your fault. It's the enemy's fault. 4, control the message. And 5, control perception. I've got one more episode that I'm going to release. While I was there, I talked to a lot of people, many of them the black vendors who were selling pro-Trump merchandise. One of these guys gave me his social media account. He has a screen printing business. On it, a Martin Luther King Jr. shirt that he did from the MLK Day parade, pro-Hillary merchandise, pro-Bernie merchandise. This guy was there to make money. He wasn't a Trump supporter. He told me so. So how does that work? Where do you draw the line when it comes to making money, expanding your influence, and your personal beliefs? I'm going to talk about that on the next episode. To make sure that you don't miss it, redpodcast.com. 1 click is all it takes to subscribe. iPhone, Android, however you get your podcast, 1 click, and I will make sure that you never miss an episode of Red Podcast. Just go to redpodcast.com right at the top. 1 click to subscribe. It's free. It's easy. redpodcast.com. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Red Podcast. If you want to reach out to me, the best way, via Twitter, @DavidHooper is how to do that. If you've got questions, comments, suggestions, love to hear from you. Thank you so much for listening to Red Podcast. I'll see you on the next episode.
You've been listening to Red Podcast, the marketing podcast for influencers. Never miss an episode. Subscribe now with your iPhone, Android, or via RSS at redpodcast.com.